The lasting impact of the American Civil War on American society. It is still considered to be one of the most significant events in the history of the United States. The American Civil War, which took place between the years 1861 and 1865. This war took place among the states of the United States. This war was fought between the states that make up the United States of America. During this conflict, the states that comprise the United States of America engaged in combat with one another. Additionally, it left behind legacies that are still visible in the present day, in addition to having an impact on every aspect of the progress of the nation. The majority of these legacies can still be seen in the present day. The impact that it had on the culture of the United States was quite profound and manifested itself in a variety of various ways during that time period. Abolition of slavery, which was one of the most significant ramifications of the Civil War, was one of the most significant outcomes that arose from the fight. The Civil War was fought between the United States of America. Slavery was the underlying cause of the conflict, and the end of the war marked the end of the institution that had impacted a significant portion of American life, particularly in the South. The war was fought for the institution of slavery, the Emancipation Proclamation, which was issued in 1863, and the 13th Amendment, which was ratified in 1865, were the legal papers that were responsible for putting an end to slavery. Approximately at the same time, both of these documents were both distributed. It was in the year 1863 that both of these pieces were made available to the public. On the other hand, the path that led to genuine freedom and equality for African Americans was a winding and complicated one that was punctuated by a number of challenges. This was a road that was filled with challenges for those who chose to take it. During the ensuing period of time, which came to be known as Reconstruction, efforts were made to reconstruct the South and to incorporate freed slaves into society as citizens who were granted equal rights. These efforts were made during the time period. Following the conclusion of the Civil War, these initiatives were carried out and completed over the period of time that followed. Despite this, during this time period, white supremacist organizations came into existence, and Jim Crow laws were put into action, which led to the enforcement of racial segregation and the loss of voting rights for African Americans. Both of these events occurred during this time period. There was not a single one of these happenings that did not take place throughout the time period being discussed. While the event was taking place, these impacts would continue to be felt over the span of several decades during the entirety of the event. The United States of America went through a considerable transformation in terms of the economy as a direct consequence of serving in the Civil War. This transition occurred throughout the course of the war. It was very necessary to have a significant amount of industrial production in order to be able to successfully carry out the war effort. As a consequence of this, significant advancements were made in the manufacturing and infrastructural sections of the economy. The victory of the North, which ensured that the nation would proceed down an industrial capitalist path, therefore led to a significant acceleration in the rate of economic progress and the establishment of the United States of America as an important industrial power throughout the world. Additionally, this resulted in the United States of America becoming a significant industrial force in the world. Concurrently, the conflict led to the establishment of a federal government that was more centralized and capable of mobilizing resources and people on a scale that had never been seen before. This was a first-of-its-kind demonstration. This condition was brought about as a result of the battle. The political and economic life of the United States of America would continue to be influenced by this power concentration in the event that it would continue to exist into the foreseeable future. In addition, the Civil War had a huge impact on the culture and society of the United States of America, which resulted in a substantial shift in the country's direction. The number of American soldiers that were killed during the course of the conflict is estimated to have exceeded 620,000. As a consequence of this, the war is the conflict that was responsible for the greatest number of deaths among American men and women from combat. As a result of this enormous loss of life, virtually every family and community was affected, which resulted in widespread mourning and a revaluation of the values and beliefs that people continue to cherish. There were a significant number of works of literature, art, and music that were created with the purpose of portraying the impressions that were felt during the war and its aftermath. These works were developed as a result of the fight, which served as the impetus for their creation. The war, which served as a source of inspiration for a considerable number of these works, was also a crucial factor in the direction that many of these works took themselves. Because of his leadership throughout the war, and his declaration of a vision of a united and free America, Abraham Lincoln became a symbol of the nation's identity and principles. He was a founding father of the United States of America. It was during the course of the struggle that he worked as a leader for the organization. Throughout the entirety of the conflict that was taking place, he held the position of head of state on 3 separate occasions. The events that took place in the years following the end of the Civil War were directly responsible for the significant political transformation that took place in the United States of America during that time period. On the other hand, the conflict was a factor that led to the consolidation of the concept of a cohesive nation, as opposed to a collection of entities that were only partially independent of one another. This was the case since the struggle was a primary reason. A number of significant revisions to the Constitution were also brought about as a direct consequence of the conflict, with the purpose of guaranteeing that all individuals, regardless of their race, are granted equal protection under the law and an equal opportunity to vote. These amendments, which are known as the 14th and 15th Amendments, were enacted with the intention of ensuring that these issues are addressed. In order to achieve the goal of enhancing the rights of all citizens, these amendments were prepared with the intention of achieving that goal. It would take another century of continuous struggle to fully realize the promise of these policies, despite the fact that the adoption of these laws established the framework for succeeding civil rights campaigns. This would result in the full realization of the potential of these policies. One more thing that happened as a result of the fight was that it changed the social fabric of the United States of America. This was an additional consequence of the conflict. When slavery was abolished and civil rights were being fought for, the dynamics of racial relations in the United States of America began to undergo a slow shift. This transformation began during the time period of the abolition of slavery. The occurrence of this happened occurring at the same time that the movement was going place. Throughout the course of their history, African Americans have continued to confront significant challenges. Yet they have begun to make progress in the areas of education, business, and politics. Despite the fact that they had been presented with these challenges for a considerable amount of time, they went ahead and did this. Changes occurred in the stereotypical roles that are associated with each gender as a consequence of women's participation in campaigns for more rights and opportunities throughout the conflict period. These adjustments occurred as a result of women's participation in these campaigns. At various moments throughout the duration of the conflict, women began to campaign for expanded rights and took on additional duties. Both of these developments occurred simultaneously. The American Civil War had a profound and long-lasting impact on American culture, bringing about fundamental changes within the nation in a variety of different ways. These changes were brought about as a result of the war. This developed as a consequence of the effects that the conflict had on the nation. To provide a brief summary, the war had a profound impact on the culture of the United States during that particular time period. This event, which also served to lay the framework for following advancements in civil rights, was responsible for the abolition of the institution of slavery as a consequence of its occurrence. In addition to this, it resulted in a broad redefinition of the social and cultural landscape, as well as a reform of the government and the economy. The incident was directly responsible for all of these occurrences that took place. It is a reminder of the nation's capacity to be divided, as well as to come together, that the legacies of the Civil War continue to have an impact on the lives of Americans and continue to serve as a reminder of this capacity. This capacity acts as a reminder that because the nation is capable of both, it is possible to attain both, given that the nation is capable of both.